to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do. Have a seat. Adjust yourself up to the microphone. You don't have to speak directly into the microphone, but you need to speak so that gentleman on the back row can hear you, okay?
Yes, sir.
Do you understand that you're now under oath and your answers to be sworn answers under penalty of perjury?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, you may proceed.
Your Honor, I was just going to wrap it up. You said it's quickly before we start.
If you would introduce yourself to the ladies and gentlemen of the jury.
Sure. My name is Nathan Holly. The last name is Holly.
And Nathan, where are you currently employed?
I'm employed at the Mississippi Forensics Laboratory in Pearl, Mississippi.
Nathan, what do you do there at the Mississippi Forensics Laboratory?
So I'm a forensic biologist specializing in DNA analysis.
And does that require any type of specialized training?
Training that I have is from the forensics laboratory.
What about your educational background? Could you tell us what that is?
Sure. I have a bachelor's in biology with a minor in chemistry from the University of Southern Mississippi.
And how long have you been employed? I'm sorry, you might have already said that. How long have you been employed with the Mississippi Forensics Laboratory?
17 years next month.
And have you been doing DNA evidence and testing that entire time?
Yes, I have.
Do you have any prior experience testifying as a forensic scientist specializing in DNA evidence?
Yes, I do.
How many times would you estimate that you've been certified as an expert?
Approximately 27.
At this point, we would tender the expert to this witness as an expert in forensic science and DNA analysis.
Any objection? All right, he'll be admitted without objection as an expert, as a forensic scientist, as an expert in the area of forensic science, particularly DNA analysis. You may proceed.
Mr. Holly, if you could tell us, for those of us that are not science people, what DNA is.
Sure. So DNA first stands for deoxyribonucleic acid, and it's a molecule that's found within the cells of the human body. And what DNA does is it tells the body how to build cells and also how to function and work those cells properly. A person gets their DNA half from their mom and half from their dad, and it's that combination of those two separate DNAs that gives everybody, except for identical twins, a unique DNA profile.
And when you do DNA testing, what are we talking about? What's done with our DNA?
Sure. So with the DNA testing, I'm looking at certain locations on that DNA molecule, and there are forensic tests that can determine what a person's DNA looks like at those locations. And I basically take items of evidence and I do the DNA process on those, and then I take reference samples or known samples, and then I compare those two DNA profiles to determine whether or not that person's DNA is there.
And a known sample would be like if a swab was taken from my mouth, we would know that that was my sample. Is that right?
Right. It's a known or reference.
And then an unknown sample would be something that you would collect or that law enforcement would collect on a piece of evidence and send that to you.
That's correct.
We just heard from Mr. Whitehead that the entire forensics laboratory, of course, is accredited. Is the DNA section of the laboratory also, does that fall under the accreditation?
Yes, it does.
And do you follow proper protocol there?
Yes, we do.
Have you personally provided or undergone any proficiency testing?
Yes.
If you could explain that to the ladies and gentlemen.
For DNA, we're proficiency tested twice a year, and it's from an outside company. And basically, it is for us to demonstrate that we are capable to do the DNA process or our job. And so there's a correct answer for that, and they double check us on that.
And your proficiency is up to date.
Yes.
Did you have the opportunity to work on a case? It's Mississippi Forensics Laboratory case number 24-003524.
Your Honor, may I refer to my notes? Yes, I did.
May I approach, in performing that work, did you actually did you render a report?
Yes, I did.
May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
Your Honor, we're not going to have an objection to the document.
I'll go ahead and ask that it be marked as the next statement exhibit.
Without objection, it'll be marked S52.
Mr. Holly, before you can do any testing there at the crime lab, you have to receive certain pieces of evidence. Is that right?
That's correct.
May I approach the witness, Your Honor? I'll put these all out in front of you. I'm handing you what's previously been marked as Exhibit 47, 48, 49, and 50. If you could, starting with number 47, tell me what that is and how you know what that is.
So this is let's see, it is a buccal swab of Carly Gregg's left cheek, and it is, I can identify it from the crime lab barcode, which has the case number and submission number on it.
And did you, is there also a buccal swab of her right cheek?
Yes,
And did you rely on that evidence in your testing in this case?
I did.
I also handed you another item, looks like 2 additional swabs. Could you tell us what those were from?
Sure. So one is a swab from a hammer of a Taurus revolver. And once again, I can identify it by the crime lab barcode that has a case number and submission number, as well as the evidence tape with my date and initial on it. And then the other one is a swab taken off of a trigger of the firearm.
In performing DNA testing, do you actually have to, well, can you describe for us, like you take an extract from something?
Yes. So the DNA process starts with extraction. And what I'm doing during the extraction is I'm actually removing the cells off of whatever substrate they're on, whether it's a swab or a cutting. And I'm lysing open that cell and getting rid of all the other cellular components except for the DNA. So the only thing that I'm left with is that isolated DNA.
Did you do that in this particular case?
Yes, I did.
Permission to approach witness.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you recognize the item that I've just handed you?
Yes.
And what are those?
So these would be the DNA extracts from my extractions on the items of evidence.
And there's 4 total, but I just want to talk about, is there one for the swab from the trigger and then one from the swab of the hammer of a firearm?
Yes, there are.
Your Honor, we'd ask that that be marked as state's next exhibit.
Any objection?
No objection, no.
All right, we'll hand the trigger extract to the court reporter. That'll be S53. extracts in the same envelope?
Yes, sir.
Okay, then just mark the one envelope S53. Is there a second envelope?
I can take the other one back, Your Honor.
Okay.
Mr. Hawley, the report that you prepared, did someone else review that work that you had done?
Yes, they did.
And did they agree with your findings?
Yes, they did.
And if you could tell us about the two items, I think I misspoke earlier in this case when I said that there was a DNA match on the hammer. Could you tell us what your findings were with regards to the hammer, the swab from the hammer on the Taurus gun?
Due to an insufficient amount of genetic information, no comparable results were obtained for the swab from hammer.
What about for the trigger of the Taurus firearm?
The DNA test results for the swab from trigger produced a partial profile which is consistent with the reference sample of the suspect. Therefore, Carly Gregg is not excluded as a possible DNA donor to this sample. Ashley Smiley is excluded as a possible DNA donor to this sample.
So explain that, because when I first read one of these reports, I was like, what does that mean, not excluded? In layman's term, I'd say that's them. But in scientific terms, you have to say that they can't be ruled out, right?
Right. So in this case, the DNA that is there, it does match to Carly Gregg's DNA.
Is there a quantification? Do you put a certain number, like 1 in so many people, that DNA belongs to?
So anytime there is a match made, we do give a statement, and I can read that one and then explain it to you. For the 8 markers compared, the genetic profile for the DNA donor of the swab from trigger occurs with a frequency of approximately 1 in greater than 10 billion random unrelated persons of the Caucasian, African American, and the Hispanic population. And so that stat is supposed to give weight to how common or how rare you would expect that profile. And in this case, it would be a rare profile.
And as I understand it, the 1 in 10 billion is actually just the forensic laboratory's cutoff. You got to stop it at a certain point.
That's right. Once the numbers get so big, it's hard to understand. We usually cap it at above the world population, which is, last time I checked, around 8 billion. So we cap it at 10 billion.
And to be clear, your report excludes Ashley Smiley as a DNA donor on the trigger of the gun.
That's correct.
Court's indulgence. No further questions, Your Honor.
Cross-examination.
No questions from the witness, sir.
May this witness be finally released by the state?
Yes, sir, Your Honor.
By the defense?
Yes, Your Honor.
You're free to go. Please leave your exhibits up there. The state may call its next witness.
The state calls Felicia McIntyre.